What's going on, people? My name is Batman, and I wanted to talk a little bit more about the Black Ops 3 engine and the game's technical capabilities in general. So for starters, let's talk about Activision's decision to ship Black Ops 3 on the old-gen consoles. Now, I know some of you may not have actually heard about this because they did it in a very quiet way. And the way they announced this is actually a perfect example of Call of Duty's typical disingenuous bait-and-switch attitude when it comes to advertising their games to their fans. So at the actual Black Ops 3 reveal, studio head Mark Lamia told Eurogamer, and I quote, "We're working on Xbox One, PS4, and PC. That's it." Now it's the last two words of that sentence. That's it. Alright? Makes it seem very definitive. And it would absolutely lead anyone hearing that statement and who had watched the Black Ops 3 reveal to conclude that this was a next-gen only game. That's the only conclusion you could walk away from after hearing that statement, after hearing them talk about it on the stage. And that is the conclusion that everybody drew. Okay, they told this line in interviews, on stage, at the reveal conference, and more notably, pre-orders at first were only available for the new gen at the time, right? Now this led everyone to conclude that it wasn't coming to the old gen, and people were generally happy about this, and we're going to talk about why that is. But a few weeks later, in a blog post on their website, Activision quietly announced that Black Ops 3 was in fact coming to the old gen, and it will be ported by a third-party studio. But here's the thing. This wasn't some snap decision they made a few weeks after they revealed the game where they're like, oh, you know, we might as well ship it on the old gen too. No. If you're gonna hire a studio to take on a project of that size, you gotta line them up well in advance so they don't take on other work, because you have to reserve that studio for the entire year, right? They gotta port all the DLC and updates and game fixes and microtransactions and all that shit, right? They gotta be working on this the whole year. Not to mention, in order to ensure a smooth launch, I'm sure that studio has probably already begun the porting process. They probably begun a long time ago. When they originally announced Black Ops 3 and what consoles it would be available on and opened up to for pre-orders, I really feel they had to have known it was still coming to the last gen, but they purposefully omitted that fact in order to essentially mislead people into thinking it would be a next-gen only title, and therefore a better title. And so, for those first few weeks after E3, pre-orders would skyrocket as intended. They didn't want to be honest about the fact they were still bringing it to the old generation of consoles from the get-go, because that would have had a negative effect on consumer hype. Less hype means less word of mouth. It means less pre-orders, ultimately. It's all about getting people fucking excited, man. And if they're not excited, the game's not going to get as many pre-orders. It's just how it works, you know? And the truth is, when you find out that it's going to be on the last-gen consoles, it does kind of have a dampening effect on your excitement. Now, why do people care if it's being ported? Why is it a bad thing? Why does it have that dampening effect on our excitement? Why were people excited when they thought it was next-gen only and disappointed when they found out that it actually wasn't? Because most people recognize that if it's possible to port it to the old gen, then it cannot truly be a next-gen game. It means there won't be anything significant in Black Ops 3 that couldn't have been done on the old-gen consoles. In order for some feature or mechanic to be genuinely next-gen, by definition, it has to be something that cannot be done on the old-gen. So what can the new-gen Black Ops 3 do that the old-gen couldn't? 4-player co-op campaign. That's the big thing. If there was anything bigger than that, they'd have to mention it. Because if there's going to be anything, you know, significant taken out of the old-gen version, they have to specifically highlight and advertise it differently for the old gen, or they could get in legit legal trouble for false advertising, because that wouldn't be some ambiguous shit like I've talked about with the dedicated servers. That would be straight up, here's a feature we advertise that is not in the game. So obviously they don't have to do that outside of the 4-player co-op campaign, right? That's the only thing they've had to be very specific and clarify this won't be in the old gen version, is the 4-player co-op campaign. Everything will be largely the same from one generation to the next. And to be clear, 4-player co-op campaign is not exactly a next-gen feature. Alright, that's something that most games have been able to do for a long time, going back to the original Xbox. This is just a testament to what low-tech COD's engine is, that they weren't able to handle it on the old gen, probably because they'd have frame rate issues or something. But then again, they were able to do it in World at War, and they've always had 4-player co-op zombies. I always figured the reason the campaign was restricted to one person was because they couldn't fit 4 people into all those like intense Michael Bay cinematic sequences, right? Where, you know, you're using the turret on the side of the helicopter and then you fall out and you're hanging on by one hand. And it's like, well, if you had 3 other people, what are they doing during that sequence? You know what I mean? Are there 3 other helicopters, or do they just have to stand there while player 1 does all the interactive cutscene bullshit? Which at this point is like half of the entire campaign's gameplay in Call of Duty games. It's just one big, extended, glorified, overdramatic cutscene. You think you're playing a game, but really you're not. there's not really any risk of failure, unless you're really fucking stupid. But presumably they found a workaround to that problem in Black Ops 3, and knowing that the old gen Call of Duties were able to handle 4-player zombies and 4-player extinction, at one point even a 4-player campaign, maybe the only reason they aren't putting 4-player in the last gen version is just so they can point to at least one thing that the new gen has over the old gen. Now that would be a dick move. Now yes, the new gen version will probably be slightly better looking, feature some gore, maybe some other minor stuff, but if there was anything as significant, or more significant than the 4-player co-op feature, they would have had to have mentioned it. And so the disappointing truth is that despite what Activision tries to tell you, this will not be a next-gen game. It can't be. Now they've said that Black Ops 3 is designed to take full advantage of the next gen, and that there will be some, and I quote, other features and functionality available to the next gen, not on old gen, but this is literally exactly what they said about Advanced Warfare. And at the end of the day, what significant advantages did new gen Advanced Warfare have over the old gen? I mean, it looked slightly better, but that's more to do with the actual consoles than the game itself, and the new gen definitely received better support, but the truth is, Advanced Warfare was not in any way a new-gen game. It was an Xbox 360 PS3 game that was sold on new-gen platforms. And people recognized this and were somewhat disappointed with Advanced Warfare. And that's why they were happy, originally, when they were misled to believe that Black Ops 3 was a new-gen only game, and disappointed, very disappointed, when we found out otherwise. So, why does Activision wanting to make money off of old-gen sales, and thus porting the game backwards, mean they can't do anything too significant on the new gen? So the important thing we need to understand is why this affects the new gen owners. Why Activision wanting to make money off of old gen sales and thus porting the game backwards means they can't do anything significant on the new gen. What this basically comes down to is that in order for the game to be backwards compatible, they can't do anything too crazy with the game's development. Things like moving it to a new engine, for instance, because otherwise then it might not be portable backwards. So if you look at something like Star Wars Battlefront, I don't think that game can be ported backwards, or at least not at a profit, because otherwise that game would be announced for old-gen systems, because EA loves money too. But we know Battlefield 4 could barely be ported backwards, right? It was capped at like 30 frames per second with frequent and significant drops below that when shit got real, and that's with significantly downgraded graphical fidelity. And this time around, Star Wars is a much higher tech product, right? You might have heard they're using that photogrammetry technique thing where, you know, they went and took actual real-life pictures of the models and landscapes that were used in the actual movies, and then I don't know how it works, but they fucking scan that shit into the game, they laser beam that shit in there, and the result is pretty freaking sweet. And this isn't to comment on the quality of its gameplay. I haven't played it yet. I know there are some, you know, very justified concerns about how it will play, and I'll comment on those at a later time. I'm not saying that I know this is going to be a good game. I don't know that. But for now, I was watching some leaked alpha footage, and it was HD uncompressed by YouTube's bullshit. Right, because YouTube videos make everything look terrible. And those are some genuinely next-gen graphics. This is the first time I've been excited about a game's graphics since Skyrim. You know, they look a lot better than Battlefield 4, and knowing how the older systems could barely handle Battlefield 4, I think it's safe to assume they couldn't handle this new photogrammetry shit. So in order to port backwards, they would probably have to retexture everything that used the photogrammetry method. And keeping in mind, retexturing is like the hardest part of making a COD sequel, because everything else can be copy and pasted from the previous game, such as, you know, the animations in the cutscenes like this. So in order to port Star Wars backwards, they'd have to basically retexture everything. And the reason they have to do that is because the game is genuinely next-gen, and the more next-gen it is, the more work has to be put into it to make it old-gen. In the case of Star Wars, it'd be almost like having to build an entirely new game. And again, I'm not trying to suck on some Star Wars cock here. I don't know that it's going to be a fun game. I don't know that as of right now. But it is a good-looking game, and as far as the technical aspects go, it does appear to be a next-gen game. So it would be a lot of fucking time and effort and money to port Star Wars backwards, and then the ported back version would suck ass, and so it would be super expensive, and it wouldn't even sell that well, and therefore it would not turn a profit. And again, if it could turn a profit on the old gen, EA would be putting it on the old gen, but they aren't. And that tells you what you need to know right there. And that's why people get excited when they find out something's not going to be on the old gen, because that means it's going to be genuinely next fucking gen. That's the point I'm trying to make here. If you improve a game too much, it cannot be ported backwards at a profit because you have to remake so much. Because genuine next-gen upgrades, genuine next-gen technology cannot be ported backwards. That's the whole fucking point to having a new-gen consoles. It's shit that the old-gen console can't do. Call of Duty will never be able to upgrade in a significant way, in the same way we're seeing with other games, such as Star Wars, as far as the technical aspects go, so long as it's making itself available on the old-gen super outdated hardware. And I say super outdated because what many of you may not realize is that the new-gen consoles were already outdated before they even released. Even the new-gen consoles, as far as what humanity is actually capable of, The new gen consoles are fucking ghetto. But that by itself might not even be why we're seeing COD on the old gen. As I've talked about in past videos, part of me thinks, well, maybe they don't want to make that upgrade regardless, right? Even if they weren't going to put it on the old gen, they don't want to put the fucking, you know, as I've discussed in depth before, they don't want to put the fucking resources into building a new engine or whatever. So they're like, well, we might as well put it on the old gen anyways. Like, what the fuck? Why not? Now, none of this is to bash on anyone who hasn't upgraded to the new gen yet. I get that not everyone has the money lying around. I'm not saying you should be punished. The unfortunate truth is that you will be punished for not upgrading if you buy this game on the old gen. Nobody should be buying Black Ops 3 on the old gen because we know how Call of Duty treats its pre-gen customers. Like shit. Just ask Advanced Warfare old gen players. On Advanced Warfare, DLC has, come out very late, and there was never any definitive information beforehand about when players could actually expect it to release. Same with basic game updates like gun balancing and fixing bugs. Remember that Invincible Goliath glitch? That was around for a much longer time on the old gen consoles, and they were in the dark the whole time as to when it would be fixed. They get the fucking shaft. You also have to keep in mind that playlist populations are going to be a serious problem later on in this game's lifespan. Even the new gen consoles have been having some serious problems with many of the less popular playlists basically being dead most of the time. And part of the problem is that the communities have been split across 2 console generations, and as more people make the switch, that problem is getting better on the new gen, but it's only ever going to get worse on the old gen, right? So if you thought the playlist population problems on Advanced Warfare old gen were bad, it's just going to get worse on the new gen. Alright, I mean on the new Black Ops 3, not the new gen, on the new COD. And another big part of the problem is that COD has lost about half its audience, but it still has as many playlists as it did when it was like 30 million strong. The hardcore modes, and now they gotta have, classic mode where you don't have any of the enhanced mobility. They have to keep all those playlists in there for the same reason that they have to, hide population counters. They have to save face. They don't want people to sort of catch on to the fact that the game is becoming less popular. They don't want people to smell blood in the water, so they have to put on a brave face, even though that's not necessarily a good thing for the customer, because it, fractures the population even further from playlist to playlist. And on top of all that, you're going to have DLC splitting up the populations even further. Now, low populations means longer matchmaking times, more lag in general, and more playlists that are simply dead and unplayable more often. These are problems the new gen version of the latest COD has suffered from later on in its lifetime, and they are problems next year's old gen COD will probably suffer from right from the get-go. So the old gen consoles are going to have a much more frustrating and limited experience because of subpar support on a technically inferior product with a shrinking community, and all at the same price as the new gen. So I don't think you should buy Black Ops 3 on the old gen. And we also have to consider that those 20 million who have forked out the money for the new gen console, those of us who haven't really seen much to justify the purchase yet on the new gen. If it wasn't for YouTube, I wouldn't have bought the new gen. And in fact, I should have made a video a long time ago. Don't buy new gen consoles, it's a waste of fucking time. I'm happy I got to play 32v32 60 frames per second Battlefield 4, but outside of that, there has not been one game that made me feel like buying a new gen console was worth it. There's not been one genuinely next gen game. And I know I'm not the only person who feels this way, and the basic point of this video is to say, hey, if you're a new gen owner, don't let them trick you into thinking this is the next gen game, that this is the next gen game you've been waiting for. At the end of the day, this will be another Xbox 360 game. This will be another fucking, Call of Duty DLC game. And that doesn't guarantee it will be bad, but don't get hyped about this on the basis that there's going to be something there you've never seen before. Because in their own subtle ways, that is the message they're still trying to push. In recent days, there's been some well-crafted PR trying to paint Call of Duty in a flattering light, alright? A gaming website, Vonderhaar himself on Twitter, and a major Call of Duty YouTuber have all made a concentrated effort to argue that, hey, despite what you may have heard, COD's engine is in fact new. Dun dun dun! So this starts with an article on GamesRadar, and the guy on GamesRadar says, yes, COD is on the same engine. No, it's not that simple, which is exactly what T. Martin ends up saying. It's really weird to me when they start using the same talking points. I noticed this when they were hyping, well, as they've been hyping Black Ops 3 too, a really similar theme that you'll see from all the major Call of Duty YouTubers and a lot of the gaming websites is that they're focusing on the little things, right? They're doing all these little things. They're making all the little things better. Have you heard any of that? Maybe I'm just imagining things, but sometimes I really feel like they're using the same talking points, and this is a perfect example of that. But it might just be T. Martin plagiarizing shit, for all I know. But anyway, so they argue, yeah, COD is on the same engine, it's not that simple. And this article is a perfect example of what does not count as journalism, alright? What the author does is bring in COD's multiplayer director, Dan Bunting, to talk about the engine. Dan Bunting argues that because they've upgraded parts of the engine every year, that at this point it's been changed so much, it's basically new. And that's it. That's the entire article. If this was real journalism, the writer would bring in a third-party independent source to provide their view. Usually several sources, independent of Treyarch and Activision, and maybe they'd agree. I actually don't think they would, and that's why they weren't brought in to begin with, but who knows? The point is you bring in different perspectives. But he doesn't do that. All he does is give a platform to a Black Ops 3 developer to make an announcement. I mean, it's barely even an article. It's like, why even make it a GamesRadar article? You know, why isn't this just a blog post on the Activision website where Dan Bunting defends his engine, right? Because it's more believable, it's more effective when it comes from a third party, as if that's, you know, confirming the claim. And keep in mind, this is exactly what the guy said in that super awkward Ghost interview that I linked in the last video. Remember that? That particular games journalist, he was from, it was PlayStation Magazine. He correctly called bullshit, alright? And I'll link that interview again if you like. It's literally the exact same argument. The guy, the Ghost developer said, oh, you know, we've upgraded little pieces here and there, and it's a new engine. Bada bing, bada boom. But the PS Mag writer was having none of it, and when that particular developer was called on it, he came clean and said, yeah, you got me, it's the Quake engine, the one from 1996. And the motherfucker in this most recent article argues that in Black Ops 3 they've completely redone the graphics and the AI, which is exactly what they said for Ghosts. It's like they just go into their PR folders from the past, like, oh, what should we use this time? Remember the super advanced AI that made the fish get out of your way? The point is, all this GamesRadar article does is give a Call of Duty developer a mouthpiece to defend their work. All this article is a Call of Duty developer saying that Call of Duty is good. But obviously COD developers, people with a vested interest in seeing the product do well, are going to paint said product in the most flattering light possible. The whole point to games journalists is that they cross-examine the claims of the developer, which is not even attempted in this article. You know, again, like I said, this article might as well have come from Treyarch themselves in a fucking blog post on their own website, because that's all it is a Treyarch developer saying the COD engine is really good and super new. But they want it to come from a third-party quote-unquote journalist because it lends the claim an extra degree of credibility, because most gamers are smart enough to take developers' claims about their product with a grain of salt, because we all recognize and categorize that as advertising. But when it comes in the form of a news article, we're more likely to trust it, even though we shouldn't, because this news article is just a fucking blog post from Treyarch. You know, just, the journalist might as well go home and fucking jerk off. He doesn't even have to write the article. Just fucking get a big-ass quote from Dan Bunting and put that shit there. Unsurprisingly, what do we find directly underneath this blowjob of an article from GamesRadar? Another article serving basically as a giant advertisement for the Black Ops 3 Collector's Edition mini-fridge bullshit. So this article gets posted on Reddit, and look who shows up in the comment section. Lord Vondermort himself. Now he's replying to a comment that argues it would be criminal mismanagement to throw out their code and start from scratch. Vonderhaar really likes this guy's line of thinking, so he's mad that he can't upvote said comment dozens of times. But the fact is, this comment is demonstrably false. We've seen plenty of companies throw out their old code and reboot their franchise on a new engine. We've seen it with Crysis, with the CryEngine, Battlefield ditched the Refractor engine for Frostbite, as I've talked about before. There's a reason other games advertise their fucking engines, alright? It's not like, you know, game engines aren't really a thing that exists, and that it's all, you know, in our imaginations. And I'm not saying it's something that needs to happen overnight, or even in the course of a single game's development. But they have now had 3 studios, each with 3 years of development time, a decade's worth of development time from the most profitable game publisher in history, and at the end of the day, what do they really have to show for it? Now, at the top of the reply thread in which we originally found Lord Vondermort lurking about with villainous intentions, is another comment who, though professing ignorance, goes on to offer basically the same talking points we saw from GamesRadar, and later on the infamous T. Martin reports on this, essentially repeating verbatim what this comment said. It's borderline plagiarism, except that the, you know, Reddit comments aren't, I guess, technically copyrighted, but I do think it almost plagiarizes the GamesRadar article, but it's not like the GamesRadar article people care. But anyways, T. Martin comes to the defense and aid of Black Ops 3's engine, in general, in the face of recent community criticism, which may or may not have been inspired, or at least further fueled, by all of us getting riled up on that last COD vid I made, and thus infecting others with our riled up merriment and reckless abandon. T. Martin argues that it's unfair to criticize COD's engine, because COD's engine is like a computer. When you continually replace parts gradually over a long period of time, bada bing, bada boom, poof. it's a new engine. It's like they're trying to get off on a motherfucking technicality. It's like those cheeky bastards who, when their parents tell them to go play outside, they just get an extension cord and set up their Xbox outside. And as cool as that kid is, in this analogy, we're the parents. And that sucks dick for us because we're not actually getting out of that request what we wanted when we made the request, which was for our little Johnny to stop touching himself to advanced supply drop opening videos like a fucking dumbass and go get some pussy instead. Now let me say, although this is common among PC users, right, the act of gradually replacing parts in your computer, making your computer better, nobody has just been updating their same rig since 1996. Because that would be fucking stupid, right? Because that's what we're talking about here. This engine was around before many of you were born. If this was a PC, at some point they would have had to have gone ahead and built a new one from scratch. Nobody is still just, you know, putting new parts in their fucking 1996 rig. No, that's not what's happening here. And I would also argue that if they're continually replacing parts on their computer, they're just replacing old parts with the same fucking parts. You know, actions speak louder than words, so okay, their engine is technically new this time. What is it able to do exactly that Advanced Warfare wasn't able to do? What is it able to do that Modern Warfare 2 couldn't do? That's the big question here, and that's the basis of the original complaint. Call of Duty is a series facing severe qualitative stagnation, and to their credit, if you go back and look at the original Quake, yeah, compared to this, you could argue it's a new engine. But I'm not sure you can argue it's a new engine when compared to MW2. I'm not sure you can argue it's a new engine when compared to COD 1. I mean, it's a better game, they've improved the engine, but is it really a new engine when compared to COD 1? I don't think so. Because, you know, what can it do that's so advanced that the COD 1 engine couldn't do? I mean, it looks slightly better. In terms of the physics, I don't think the physics are even that much more advanced than frickin' Quake. It's just the graphics look a lot better than Quake. But as far as the mechanics go, I'm not sure that Call of Duty can do anything mechanically that Quake couldn't do. I mean, you fucking shoot people, there's no bullet trajectory or bullet drop, or, you know, the bullets aren't even actual objects, right? Just like in Quake, the bullet just instantly touches the bad guy. It's not like there's any destruction or, you know, whatever. When you blow up a helicopter or whatever, it looks just about as, I mean, the graphics look better, but the actual physical act of it coming apart is about on par with something blowing up in Quake. And look, some people are okay with that. You know, if they want this to be a Madden type thing where the biggest change in COD every year is the equivalent of updated rosters for teams in Madden, and people are cool with that, that's fine. But as a fan base, let's be clear about what we're getting ourselves into here. What the actual product is we're buying. And let's stop buying into Activision's hyperbolic marketing campaigns. What Call of Duty always does is try to sell us an iceberg, okay? They give us what's supposed to be a little taste of it with the teased gameplay and an E3 demo. That's the top of the iceberg. And then they go about trying to convince us that this bottom part of the iceberg exists and is really neat, and we'll have to buy the game to find out more about it. And a lot of the time it involves very general, you know, often ambiguous claims talking up their engine. Alright, they always love to get in some little deets about their new engine. With Advanced Warfare, they completely overhauled audio, the audio engine. Ghost completely redid the AI. This time around, Black Ops 3 is redoing graphics and AI. But think back to the last times we heard this same kind of shit. Was the Advanced Warfare audio overhaul that memorable? Would you have even known it existed if they hadn't told you it did? That's the fucking thing here. That's the motherfucking thing. How much of this, you know, new cool stuff in COD only exists because they tell you it exists? How much of it would you actually notice on your own if they didn't tell you to look for it, right? That's what the fuck this comes down to. And we have consistently fallen for this little trick, because this is usually how it is with every other game. That big part of the iceberg that we don't see in the trailer is always there when we go and buy the game, and it's fun to explore. And the reason we are always so disappointed with new COD releases is because we're always expecting that bottom half of the iceberg, but it's never there. And we're always confused about why we're even excited for it in the first place. So we're like, wait, what? People were hyped for Advanced Warfare. You know, I know there are going to be people who say, oh, nobody gave a shit at that. No, people were fucking hyped for Advanced Warfare. Nobody gives a shit now. You know, 3 months into Advanced Warfare, we're fucking done with this game. Doses. There are 2 games where the bottom half of this iceberg doesn't really exist, and that's COD and Madden. Now, Madden has an excuse. There's not much they can actually do to a football simulator. They can't change the rules or the layout of the field or what the fucking players look like or what they're capable to do. And Madden players, including myself, are fine with that, because all we want is a football simulator with updated rosters. And it's the same way with COD. Except that I'm not fine with it, because I'm always expecting more, and I am thus inevitably let down year after year after year after year, as are so many of you. And I'm just saying we can avoid that this time around, and if we do, COD will be better off for it. It's like how if you cheat on all your schoolwork, you're not actually learning anything. COD can cheat and basically trick us into thinking the bottom half of this iceberg is there, when it's not. It never has to actually put that bottom of the iceberg in there. If you look around on YouTube right now, you'll see literally hours worth of Black Ops 3 gameplay from the major YouTubers who are in bed with Activision. I mean hours worth. If you want to know what that game's about, go watch some of that footage. Because that footage is perfectly representative of what that game will be. Just as that footage every year, you know, those YouTubers get it every year, it's always perfectly representative of what it will be. You can already see the top part of this iceberg, and that's all there ever is the top part. You can already see everything that you need to know about this game, everything that it will be, everything that it is. You can already go see that. Maybe the one area where there is some potential for some bottom of the iceberg is zombies, the zombies trailer. That zombies trailer looked interesting to me. I didn't see anything that looked like it couldn't have been a Black Ops 2 DLC map, if that makes sense. I mean, you know, it looks like some interesting new mechanics with the gumball thing, but like, if there was something big and amazing, I feel like they would have showed it off. But the two big takeaways I had were a new type of zombie boss and some sort of new perk mechanic with the gumball machine. Frankly, I think those things could have been done in Black Ops 2 DLC. And ultimately, that's what Call of Duty always is. It's like a DLC game, right? It's like what they're trying to do with Destiny the Taken King, except this time they're just being more honest about it. And that way nobody's disappointed, because it's not like they thought it was going to be a real game and then it's a DLC. This time, they think it's just going to be a big-ass DLC, and that's what it'll be, right? So it works out. And look, if you like the top of that iceberg that you can already see, you know, if you thought the zombies trailer looked cool, and I understand that, Black Ops has had really cool wave defense in the past. If you like that top of the iceberg, if you like what you see in those multiplayer videos that you can already go see on everyone's fucking channel, if you liked the idea of the 4-player campaign, you know, more power to you. I'm not saying that, I'm not trying to argue that I'm guaranteeing it's a bad game. I'm not saying like, oh, this game looks like shit. I'm just saying that remember that that top of the iceberg you can already see, that's all there is. That's all there ever is. If you don't want to be let down, don't expect much more than just basically a DLC game, right? That's what this is a DLC game. Think of it almost as like the Taken King from Destiny. That way none of us have to be let down when it comes out. My ultimate goal, right, what I argue in favor of, what I advocate for on this channel, is for a game's commercial success to reflect the quality of its content and not the quality of its marketing campaign. Call of Duty is the master of generating commercial success off of hyperbolic and overdramatic marketing campaigns that are ultimately not reflective of the true scope of the game itself. When they try to pretend that this game is going to be next gen, they're going to find all clever ways to sort of hint at it. You know, we're taking full advantage of the next gen. There's going to be other features and functionality only available for next gen. We completely overhauled the graphics and AI engines. All that fucking shit that they're going to tell you, all right? It's the same shit they've said for, you know, so many past Call of Duty games. And in the end, their bark is always so much louder than the bite. You know what I mean? Don't let them trick you into thinking there's something super special this game can do that past Call of Duties haven't done. It's disingenuous. I recommend caution and skepticism. Wait till the reviews. I'm gonna bust a review out for this game as soon as I feel it can be accurately judged, and hey, I might have nice things to say. You know, Vonderhaar recently tweeted that he thinks all the netcode problems I've been so upset about are gonna be fixed because he has a dude working on it. Not just a person, but a motherfucking dude. And if that's true, then I'll be the first one to sing his praises. But until I can actually play that fucking game, I'm not gonna give him the benefit of the doubt, and neither should you. Because words are wind. COD talks the talk, but can it walk the walk? People's fixation on the Call of Duty engine is just the result of people wanting an unambiguously, objectively superior game, which COD hasn't been able to deliver for years now. Their commercial success has been a house of cards built on false promises, ambiguously worded statements, and hyperbolic marketing claims, regurgitated from every gaming news source that wants a leg up on the competition when it comes to getting the behind-the-scenes exclusive deets on next year's Call of Duty. That includes GamesRadar with its shoddy reporting, and T. Martin's bitch ass reading some comment on Reddit and copy and pasting it into a video. I got a better title for that video, by the way, Sucking Dick for Money, because that's all that is. Oh, and in case you didn't realize, that next COD in 2016 that they're jockeying for the behind-the-scenes deets on already, it's going to be Call of Duty Ghosts 2. So at least we have something to look forward to, right? Please remember to rate the video if you enjoyed it. For the win query of the day is, do you think that Black Ops Juggernog Mini Fridge Special Edition Deluxe Collector's Digital Exclusive Blowjob version $200 thing, do you think that's worth it? Because here's the thing, I'll be the first one to admit, Juggernog Mini Fridge, that sounds pretty cool. It'd be cooler if it had the little jingle, they had some sort of jingle, right? The Juggernog jingle played when you like open the fridge, but it doesn't have that. That'd be fucking cool if it did have that, but it doesn't have that. Regardless, I think it's cool. But do I think it's worth the $200 that they're asking for it? No! This is Batman, signing out.